Hello and welcome to the Thinking Cap Solutions podcast. We talk everything content, audience, engagement and leadership. My name is Corey Kay. Hello, Mickey Ma.
G'day, Corey. Good to be here.
Today's episode, mate, is of an international flavour, and it's one that has got social media talking around a topic. It is centred around Elon Musk and Donald Trump. Watching two adult men who are world leaders in their own right and are so influential in the world, having this to and fro where it looks like a couple of kindergarten kids throwing crayons at each other. We're talking about emotional intelligence today. What do you make of it?
Well, they're two clear gentlemen that lack in emotional intelligence is what I see, which is scary considering one is the leader of the free world and the other one is one of the most successful, wealthiest, somewhat influential businessmen globally, and yet 1 minute they are besties, next minute they're having a tiff and it's gone crazy publicly, like massive spats, and it just reeks of two, while successful, two guys that are so driven by ego and lack emotional intelligence to deal with appropriately.
Let's counterbalance it though, Mickey, because I actually want to talk about someone who's phenomenal as a leader and actually started reading her book, and that's Jacinda Ardern. You want to talk about contrast between the style of Trump and Elon, and you've got someone like Jacinda Ardern. And let's put the politics aside, because if talking to people in New Zealand, it's very divided how they feel about it. But one thing you have to give her credit for is having emotional intelligence. And the scenarios, like if you remember the Christchurch Mosque massacre?
Tragic, terrible. She held herself exceptionally well, and one of her strongest traits through that was her empathy, wasn't it?
National trauma. New Zealand's really small. It's only a population of just over 4 million people, and they're all connected. It's 2 degrees of separation. And the way that she was able to bring everyone together, she was focused on unity and not the fear or retaliation. And it was all about healing, and she was offering thoughts. She acted, she moved swiftly, a phenomenal way in which she did it. And then even the way that she resigned, but she just said, I don't have enough in the tank. There's authenticity to actually how she exited her post.
Honesty, authenticity, being raw, vulnerable. I mean, that's powerful stuff. And you know, we don't see much of that, right? And that's the key here. And this is where, depending on, I guess, how old you are, how long you've been in the professional world, will be the type of leaders, I guess, that you've been exposed to. And I know for you and I, Corey, when we came through, emotional intelligence wasn't really a thing. It definitely wasn't necessarily labelled per se as that. And kind of, if it was labelled anything, it was labelled as weakness. If you had emotions or showed emotion or showed vulnerability, it was weak. It was very ruled by fists, fear. And, I mean, I survived through that, coming through the ranks of that and being taught. And it probably taught me a lot that put me in good stead to learn about emotional intelligence, but it wasn't a thing then. Thankfully, that way is the old way, but I've got to say it still exists significantly. And we're seeing it at the top. If we want to refer sort of back to Trump and Musk, there's a lot of sweeping statements that get thrown out and that can be dangerous.
There was a part of me early on in my career with that style where I thrived, because it's much easier than having the 5 attributes for emotional intelligence, which is self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, and social skills. It was just the easy way of actually executing leadership. And this is a more challenging path, isn't it?
More challenging, but it goes deeper. And I believe the results can be stronger and more sustainable when you have strong emotional intelligence, and that's at the roots of not only your leadership, but the culture that you create, because then there is a deeper level of trust and those things that come with feeling safe in that environment. And safe doesn't mean complacent. That safe doesn't mean I can get away with anything. Safe doesn't mean you won't be held accountable. It just simply means a safe environment to be authentically yourself and to be able to control and speak your truth.
So let's dig deeper into it. Let's start with self-awareness. So, Mickey, what does it actually look like in the real world, and how do we know when it's not there?
Well, it's really knowing how you're feeling in any moment. It's about knowing those things that can influence and impact your ability to how you feel or to decisions that you make. Sometimes those things could be biases, and biases are typically things that are taught early on in life, through how we're parented, through our school life, our friends, our influences, the things that we are exposed to. So those things can play an impact. So when you've got self-awareness, you can immediately know, I can start to feel my heart rate pick up here. So something's clearly on edge here. What might be driving that? Or someone's saying something that doesn't necessarily sit right with my predeceived opinions. So I'm starting to get my back up. Okay, I need to be mindful of that. So self-awareness is being really present with how you're feeling. And it can be, if you really work hard at this, it's amazing how quickly you can pick up on things that initially you will never really realize. Like things like, all of a sudden I can feel my heart or my body temperature warm up or whatever it is, or I get stiff in the body. It's those things that you start to pick up on. And that's the self-awareness to go, okay, something's not feeling right here, or something's feeling amazing here. Why might that be? And then that moves to the next step, which is the self-regulation.
And we've all worked with someone who just reacts, the person whose energy can crash a meeting. And this is where self-regulation comes in, right? So how do you work with someone or coach someone the ability to pause between the stimulation and the response? So the self-awareness and then the self-regulation.
Well, the first thing is exactly that, teaching people to take a moment. And that's not necessarily in the moment, because depending on the person, that might just sort of fire them up more. First, you've got to have your own self-awareness to be able to see it in other people. And the regulation is around going, okay, I feel that. Is this a good feeling? Is this a not so good feeling? And then what do I need to do with that feeling to regulate that? And to my point before, so if you go, okay, my heart's picking up here. Okay, well, it's based on excitement. Okay, we'll go with it. Or my heart rate's sort of picked up at the moment because it's coming from anxiety. Okay, what's driving that? What can I do to control my anxiety? Or if you're seeing it in someone else, you can ask questions to try and bring that information to the surface. But the regulation's a critical piece, because otherwise all of a sudden then we start to get frustrated if we simply don't hear things back that we're expecting to hear. People don't do things the way we want them to do. So self-regulation is about going, okay, it's not about stopping those things. It's about having the awareness about those things and going, okay, how can I regulate that to be more appropriate in the moment to control however it is that I'm feeling, or the behavior that I'm feeling on the inside, so it doesn't sort of come the outside. Because we've seen it, mate, as you touched on, where we've had people that couldn't hide it. They just couldn't hide their emotions. If they were frustrated, you could not only feel it, you could see it and you could hear it. And that's not okay.
Going back to that self-awareness, particularly when, and I'm drawing on experience here, self-awareness is even more critical when you are in the leadership role and you're setting the temperature every day that you come in. And we'd talk about this a lot when you would work with me. And don't discount, Corey, your body language and the way that you present yourself every day when you come in. Whether you're frustrated or pissed off, people will see that and they'll be affected by it.
Look, it's a good point, because composure is probably the word I would use, actually, is composure in those moments. And it's typically those moments where you're the most vulnerable, and it's typically those moments when it's kind of the risk of fight or flight mode. Composure is and if you think about it, okay, an employee comes to you to just verbal diarrhea to you that the world's going to end because something hasn't gone to plan. Or in your personal life, it could be, your partner wants to have a crack at you because you've left the dishes on the bench, or whatever it might be. The easy thing to do is to go, well, I'm going to match their energy and their temperature, and then let's just start going at it. What good's going to come of that? Or composure. Okay, just because that's them, I just calm down, and you can all of a sudden bring the energy down, and you can actually bring it back to a level playing and more calm feel. And it is a critical thing for leaders, but it's a critical thing for anyone. And
you can shut people down. The opposite can happen where people actually will just back away. I recall a leader who at their best was amazing to work for, but at their worst, you just wanted to, you just didn't say a word. And all of a sudden we've got inconsistencies in behavior, and that brings a whole other dynamic to a team as well.
Well, that's the lack of self-regulation, right? When they're good, they're great. When they're not so good, they're terrible. That's exactly an example of not being able to self-regulate. The highs are super high and the lows are super low. It's kind of, it's not about being monotone either. I think the great thing with the great leaders of today is they do have the ability to show trust and empathy, but also to show frustration and but in the right manner and in a controlled manner, in a way that has meaningful impact as opposed to disastrous impact.
Let's talk motivation. So it can look like drive on the surface, but emotionally intelligent motivation is different. So what happens, Mickey, with a leader's motivation that's ego-driven versus purpose-driven?
The purpose-driven is around we're here together. We're in this together to achieve this outcome. It's around unitedness, where ego is about me. Ego is about control. Ego is about what I want and the outcome I want. So it's very self-centered. And where emotional intelligence person, they still might be the leader and they might still pull the reins, but they have a smart way of bringing the group together to motivate them. Motivate everyone together as opposed to through your own ego.
Can you think of anyone that you work with who had that purpose-driven motivation that you thrived off?
For anyone that's not in the radio world won't know him, but a guy called Guy Dobson, for me was someone who was always about the greater purpose and had, amazingly strong emotional intelligence. Very rare that you'd ever see him frustrated. That doesn't mean that he didn't get frustrated, but he was able to be real, raw, but in a really considered approach. So I thought, he was absolutely one of them. One that probably expressed their emotions more, but had great emotional intelligence and motivated in the right way. For me was Grant Blackley as well, who was one of our CEOs. Now, you just wanted to buy what he was selling. He had a great way to motivate people with clear explanation of what the intent was, what the purpose of what we were trying to achieve. And to me, it was easy to be inspired by that.
Do they have similar styles or different styles?
I think very different, but I think the similarities it was around we are going to do this and we can do this and we are going to do this. It was a lot of we, where, the other side of that is leaders that it's, I think we need to do this. No, that's not right. We must do this. And all of a sudden becomes a dictatorship and a control thing. And again, because it's driven from their own ego or their own fears. And not many people get motivated by that. Not over sustainable periods of time anyway.
Empathy, a tricky one because it can be confused with being soft. But what does true empathy look like inside of a high-performance pressure cooker environment?
It starts with reading the room, understanding who you're dealing with, the situation, what's the consensus in the room, what's the feeling based on the situation. So if it's a room full of people, you're about to tell we're about to lay off 100 people, or, hey, some exciting news, we're about to expand the business and there's great opportunities coming for people. It's reading the room. What's the likelihood of the general consensus of the room on how they might be feeling here, and then adjusting your approach. Empathy is around showing compassion and care for people's needs, their fears. And it doesn't mean dropping your standards to that, but it is absolutely about being understanding of other people's emotions and what might drive them or hold them back.
See the empathy piece and having, and like you say, gone through a period where it was iron fist. And I remember it was a female general manager who showed me the value and the power of empathy. And its simplest form, empathy, I always think it's listening. And I remember that experience with that particular general manager inspired me to want to develop that skill, be a better listener and show empathy, because the way that she made me feel being listened to made me want to work harder for her. She had my back, and now I've got yours.
And it's such a powerful thing, but it's an underused skill to listen. And I think that's a great key trait of empathy, seeking to listen. It's such a wonderful thing. And I don't have any evidence to back this up. And I know you feel very similar to this, that it does feel that women are far more at home with emotional intelligence than men. I definitely in our careers, we've seen that. The concerning thing with that is it's such a critical piece, yet there's not enough women in strong leadership positions. And while things are changing, and hopefully for the right reasons, and hopefully it's because of that great awareness around emotional intelligence, and that's what they're there for, to do that. But I think for a long period of time, that may have been a part of what held women back.
Let's move on to social skills. So this is the social game, probably the most misunderstood of the five. It's not about being a people person, is it?
No, and it's not about, all right, let's go to the pub at 5 o'clock every Friday and I'll shout you drinks either. It's about building trust and building an influential relationship with those around you. So that way you can get buy-in. And that's really valuable around times of change and uncertainty, and that's really relevant in the world right now and has been for the last 4 or 5 years. But social skills is about the adaptability for who you're dealing with. And you think about in our careers, at times we were in environments with upper management, sometimes it was with our peers, and sometimes it was with our teams. Sometimes within our teams, it was with people that are new to the business, perhaps days or weeks, and others that have been doing it for 30 years. So the social skill piece is around how do I build relationships with somebody, irrespective of where they sit on the corporate ladder, irrespective of the type of who they are, and the ability to build meaningful relationships with them. They feel connected to me, and I can feel that I can positively influence outcomes and situations in a meaningful way.
I think back to our media careers, and there'll be those leaders who I would consider have far greater skills at actually doing the radio part of it. I'd always say they could build a radio station with a piece of chicken wire. They were just incredible at what they did, but they didn't have the social skills. Is this the one that kind of brings it all together, Mickey? If you can't bring all these different people, all these different personality types together, how does it possibly work?
It's definitely a critical piece. I think they all are, but the social skill element of emotional intelligence is a really powerful one. And I think that can be the difference between really good leaders and really great leaders. It's a vital piece of this, and it doesn't come naturally to everyone. But the good thing is emotional intelligence can be taught, can be learned when you practice and flex.
Through training, what I learned around this, and listening to all five, and you're going, I can do 3. I don't think I can do those other 2. Potentially, it's about I'm natural at 3 of them. I need to flex, and flex means I probably need to take the time to be able to execute some of these, as opposed to it coming naturally.
And spot on, because having emotional intelligence is not about becoming a robot or the perfect AI created leader that has no true heartbeat or soul. It's not, because as we've just discussed, one of the key traits is what you just touched on, self-awareness. To go, okay, well, I can be quite fiery. So if I've got that self-awareness of that, and then I go to point 2 of self-regulation, okay, so I need to temper myself because I'm about to go into a situation. I know I can be a bit fiery. This is likely to be one, so I need to temper that. Then all of a sudden, that's the flexing you're talking about there, Corey. Yeah. It doesn't mean that those things aren't innately still who you are. This is not about changing who you are. It's about modifying the behavior to ensure that you're maximizing your emotional intelligence.
So for anyone listening to this and thinking, I've got a lot to work on here, or I need to work on this, that, and the other, Mickey, where do you start? What do you do?
I used to always like to start through self-reflection. And for me, that was at the end of each. Actually, I did it twice a day, but initially it was at the end of each day. I would go home and on the drive home, I'd sort of reflect on the day. Okay, what worked well out of today and what didn't work so well, and what would I do differently? And it was less about outcomes. It was more around my interactions with people, relationships. And this was really when I wanted to make a significant stance and growth in my leadership capabilities. I really wanted to double down on it. And again, this is around, it didn't necessarily come naturally to me. So I was like, okay, where do I need to improve? Well, the first thing is I've got to have greater self-awareness. So to do that, why don't I self-reflect? It's about being honest with myself. So I took that drive home to go, okay, yeah, that worked well because of this. Or, you know what, when I reacted that way, or when I turned that person away when they needed me today, I probably could have handled it better. This is what I'll do next time. And then taking note of that and then adapting that for the next day. And the intent would be that hopefully over a period of time, the same things wouldn't keep coming up. And if they did, then I would take that into paid, leadership training, which I've done plenty of times over my career as well. And I go, okay, I seem to keep defaulting to here. The other thing to do, which I've always valued, is seeking feedback. Genuine feedback from those around you. We've talked about this in previous podcasts as well. So seeking the feedback's great. Self-reflection is great, but then what do you do with that? So for me, then it was about going, okay, you've told me that. I'm now going to put things in place. So it's practice. It's not about being perfect, but it's about practicing those things. So it's showing intent for yourself, showing those intent for others. Also the ability to pause, self-pause when you know, okay, again, I feel my back's getting up here. This person's starting to frustrate me. Do I need to be expressing that, or do I need to regulate here? So practicing the self-pause is really important. And even your own emotional check-ins, because sometimes our emotional intelligence is at work is impacted by stuff going on at home. So we could be having a really struggling time at home. Our stress levels are already high. So we come into work already plus 50% before anything's gone wrong. To have that emotional check-in on yourself, so then you can kind of temper that as well. And then I would highly suggest coaching and or mentoring. And you and I have done plenty of that, both on the receiving end, but also on the giving end of that over our careers, and can't praise that enough. Invest in yourself, and ideally you work for a company that will hopefully invest in you in that as well. But we've all spent our own money as well, mate, to invest in ourselves in these areas, and it's extremely valuable. It pays dividends.
And be patient. Rome isn't built in a day, and we're talking about something that has a huge payoff, and usually anything that's got a big payoff, hard work and application is required. And I know for me, you can beat yourself to a pulp getting things wrong, and that's going to be a part of your emotional intelligence. When you get things wrong, you own them with the people that you got it wrong with. That's a part of the journey. I would go as far to say, if you're starting to do work on emotional intelligence and trying to be better as a leader, tell your people. It doesn't mean you have to go into the big deep dive into it, but letting them know if you think that you've got some frailties or weaknesses in your leadership that you're working on, and you want them to know that A, you've identified it, and B, call me out on it. That also is a powerful tool, because people will give you a break, man. When they know that you're actually working on something and want to be better for them, they are going to appreciate and respect that.
I love that, actually. And actually reminded me of, I've actually done that a few times over my career, and each time, mate, it's paid off exceptionally well because of that honesty. I think that's perfect. It can be scary, because then all of a sudden you put it out there into the public domain with those around you to go, hey,
my armor, I'm not perfect.
Yeah, and the risk of failure. And I know in my instances there was never a risk of failure, because I was so motivated to get better, but I needed to do it for the right reasons. And for me, I wanted to be a great person, but I wanted first and foremost, but I wanted to be a great leader for the people. And then I also wanted to be a great human being for my life outside of radio, and allowing people in on that and showing that vulnerability and say, look, I'm not going to be perfect, but so come along for the ride with me. When I do well, don't be afraid to let me know, but also don't blow smoke up my butt. But equally, if I fall below par on expectations, then please let me know, because it's the only way I'm going to get better. And it'll be amazing how people will show that care back to you, to go, hey, look, that wasn't ideal today, but I know you're working on it. And you go, wow, thank you. And all of a sudden, it's an amazing feeling, and you just feel so well supported then, and that just gives you that confidence and that courage to keep moving forward. Because what you touched on there before, we're all human beings. We're not robots. And this is the thing about AI. AI, it's got no heart, it's got no soul, whatever. We're human beings do. And with that comes the roller coaster of emotions. It's just about how you temper it. Making mistakes is okay. It's part of human life.
At the end of the day, emotional intelligence is the difference between connection and disconnection, trust and turnover. And if you're not building emotional intelligence, you're likely building distance.
Emotional intelligence is one of the greatest strengths in the human world. If you need help, if you want to know more on this, we'd love to speak with you. We can mentor, we can offer leadership training, we can steer you in the right direction. We'd love to speak to you. Please get in touch with us. You can do that on our website, thinkingcapsolutions.com.au, or get to us on LinkedIn, Thinking Cap Solutions. It's all one word.